lesson number 3. Today we're going to be talking about chords, things called triads, which are actually just 3-note chords. And I'm going to show you how to also play another scale. It's going to be a D major this time. And yeah, we'll use some D major chords. I'll show you how to do broken and solid, and that's what we're going to do for the lesson. Okay, so let's... Alright, so here we are at the piano again. Now, in the last lesson I showed you the G major scale and I showed you tones and semitones. So in this lesson I'm going to show you something called chords. And you've heard them a lot in piano before, or music hopefully. If you haven't, that's fine. A chord is basically a group of notes that sounds good together. Sort of like a scale is a group of notes played in order that sound good together. A chord is actually a group of notes in that scale that sound good together. So an example would be, say we have the C major scale. We're going to use the first note, the third note, and the fifth note of that scale. And that'll produce our tonic chord. So, as you notice, it's basically starting on the tonic. Ooh. Isn't that rocket science? So if you remember from the previous lesson, the tonic is the first note of the scale. So that's the bottom note of our chord is the tonic note, so we call it the tonic chord. Now this chord is the strongest out of all of them, and it's one of the only chords that you would use if you're playing a piece, right? Say you're just messing around the piano and then you just want to end the piece, so you'd hit the tonic chord of whatever key you're in. And don't worry, you're probably thinking, oh, well, I'll never get to that point, but trust me, probably within a month, maybe 2 months from now of solid practice, I'm thinking about an hour a day if you can muster, but you know what, even 15 minutes a day is better than an hour every 3 days. Okay? 15 minutes a day steadily is better than an hour every 3 days, even though you'd be getting more practice time that way, because it's more important for you to do it every single day. Okay? Alright, so the chords, you will get to this point, and I just want to introduce this to you so it's not something brand new. And this is kind of fun too, when you can start doing chords. So, a C major chord starts on C, and it goes to the E. Now if you notice, all I'm doing is I'm just skipping a note. Yeah, and the reason I called it C major instead of a tonic is that's another name for it. Because look, it's on C, so it's C major chord. Now, the other main chord of C major is called the dominant. Now, I didn't tell you this in the last lesson, but the fifth note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that one is called the dominant. And it's the second strongest note in the scale, and it pulls you back to the tonic. So, whenever you want to end a piece, you can just be doing... Then you can hit a tonic chord, and then you can just hit... Or sorry, that was a dominant, and then dominant to a tonic. Now notice how that sounded kind of leaping. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to play a tonic chord, but we're going to move the G down here and keep the C and the E here. Now that sounds good. That's called an inversion. So you're like, oh man, Andrew, you're just going so fast now. All these inversions and whatnot and flipping it around. Don't worry, now I'm going to explain it. So an inversion is actually quite simple. All it is like, say you have building blocks, right? Have you guys ever played Jenga? It's like you take one block and then you put it on top. So what you're going to do, say these are 3 blocks, and we want to do an inversion like this. We're going to take this note, and we're going to move it over here. So it goes, whee, boom. And now we're just going to play those notes. By the way, I'm only using these so you can see what notes I'm pressing down. Technically, you should be using your thumb, your second, and your fifth. But the rule with fingering is you just use whatever comes naturally or feels the best. So experiment a little bit. But generally, for most normal hands, unless you've got really small hands or really big hands, you want to be using the standard and fingering because it has proven to be the best. So, your thumb, your second, and your fifth. Now the reason we do that is because it's a very natural stretch. If we use our third here, it feels a little awkward. Okay, whereas 1, 3, 5, that's just one key per note, or one finger per key. Anyway, okay, so an inversion is just moving the note on top of each other. So there's actually names for inversions. So the first inversion, or this, is actually called the root, because it's like where you're staying. Then it goes to the first inversion, and then the second inversion, and then back to root. So you can use chords like C major, but you can have them like this in any of those patterns. Cool, huh? So notice how each of them have a different sound. This one sounds very closed and final. This one has sort of a higher opening sound. And this has a really open sound. Cool, huh? So those are called inversions, and they can be for every chord. Every chord has an inversion. So, yeah, I actually didn't plan to get into inversions there, but whatever. As we go, that's fine. So, I mean, it's important to know what an inversion is. So, inversions are, you'll notice in piano and music, there's a lot of huge words that sound very scary, but they're actually really simple. So, inversion is just a different way of moving the notes around. So, it's still all the same notes, because look at this. I have a C, an E, and a G. Now, if I'm playing this, what do I have? I have a C, an E, and a G. So I still have the same three notes, but they're just in a different order. How easy is that? So, C, E, G, and now I just have E, G, C, G, C, E. It's sort of like taking the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and then just altering those numbers into different orders. But it's the same three numbers. Okay, anyway. So that is called a solid chord when you play all three down together. Now, to play a chord properly, you need to have all three or all the notes in the chord go down at the very exact same time, as if they're one note. You don't want any of this, where like one note's going down, another isn't, or like that. That's bad. So you want to aim to have all notes go down and up together at the same time. Now, probably at first you're going to have difficulty doing these chords, and don't worry about that. You're going to do this exercise. Play the outside notes by themselves, so just 1 and 5, then play the inside note, then play the outside and the middle note. This is going to strengthen your fingers and get your hand used to playing these notes. After a whole bunch of time doing that, then you'll be ready to do this. And it'll take a while before you get a sound where you're actually happy with the sound. And then once you get more advanced, what you're going to aim to do is get all the notes going down at the same time, and then you're actually going to push forward into the keys, not just straight down. Because when you push straight down, you get kind of a banging, kind of like harsh sound. Whereas if you get push forward, it rounds out the sound and you get a nicer sound. So, now, those are called solid chords. Well, actually, technically, these are triads. All you have to do a chord is you're going to add, now some of you might not be able to do this if you're younger, or you have smaller hands. Now, reaching an octave is going from C to another C. And I'd advise that you be really, really careful when you do this, because if you stretch your hands too much, you can get injured or do tendonitis. So just do it slowly, and eventually you'll be able to reach it, hopefully. And if not, don't worry, because you can still roll the chords. And I'll get to that in a later lesson. Okay, so if you do want to play this though, this is actually called a full 4-note chord. You're going to play the C, the E, and the G, and then just add whatever note is on the bottom up at the top. It's that simple. So then we go, and now we're going to do this one, this one, this one, and which note was on the bottom? It's the E, so we just play an E. And then, ta-da! So those are chords. Those are solid chords. Now, there's another pattern of chords called broken chords. Now, can you guess what they're going to sound like? Well, you could take a sledgehammer and try playing the chords with the sledgehammer, and that would be a very broken chord because you'd have a broken piano. But that would be the wrong kind of broken. What we want to do is break the chord up. Like that. Instead of playing it all at the same time, we're going to actually play it broken. So it's going C to E to G. So how we're going to do this is it's sort of the motion of turning a doorknob. Have you ever opened a doorknob? I hope so. Otherwise, how would you get around in your house? You'd have to be like, tell you like your husband or wife or child, open that door for me. And how would you ever get out of the bathroom? Anyway, so you turn your wrist and you rotate your wrist. So that's the motion we want to do with this, is we want a rotating motion. Because we actually want to use our arm to play the keys. We don't just want to use our fingers. A lot of people think that piano only has to do with your fingers. But actually it has to do with your entire arm, starting way up at your shoulder. So, what we want to do is we're going to roll, so we're going to start with our thumb, play on the side of our thumb, go right to the bottom of the key, get a nice tone. Now go to the middle key, or I guess our middle finger, the third one. Now as we do it, we're going to roll our wrist like this. Now as you can see, I've got a little gentle roll. I'm not doing stuff like this. It's a piggy rolling around in the mud. Oink, oink, oink. Okay, back to work, piggy. Okay, so it's just a nice gentle roll. We want to use our we want to relax our hand and keep our muscles relaxed. Versus this. Now, which do you think sounds more easy on the ears? So, it's all about wrist motions, and it'll actually help quite a bit if you can think of using your arm to play the piano just as much as your fingers. Especially in a real piano, you can hear a big difference in how all the keys sound and how it's all played if you are using your arm to play it. You can hear the subtle differences from your arm than you can if you're just using fingers. Okay? Alright, so that's one thing. So it's rocking back and forth. So I would practice that quite a bit. Now, so that's the first one. Now we can go to the next inversion. We can do this. Now we're going to pull our thumb in and put it where the third finger was. And we're going to put our second finger out and stretch our hand out again, sort of like an accordion. And then as we roll over here, we're going to pull our thumb in and drop it on the G. And see how as I'm doing this? So it's a lot of rocking back and forth into those keys. Just like that. And I know it's not going to be just that easy when you first start, because trust me, I've been doing piano since I was 5 years old. I've been taking lessons since I was 5. And it doesn't just happen overnight. Sometimes there's a couple rough days and there might be some tears one day and you just gotta stick through it. And trust me, it'll all work out in the end. Okay. Anyway, so that is triads. So that is broken and solid. You can do that with the left hand as well. Okay? Alright, and so my whole point was that you can use a dominant chord because we can use this in G. Now, do you know what the beauty of all this is? If you know the C position, see how it's white, white, white? If you go to G, to your hand it feels exactly the same thing. So all you have to do is tell your brain this is the exact same motion, and you can do it in any of these white keys pretty much. Because you can go, or you can go. Now, if you notice, that has a different sound. That has a minor sound. But I'm not going to get into majors and minors yet. I'm only covering majors right now. But the important thing is that you can play any of these basic chords. And you can do a lot with them, actually. Alright, so that is chords. Now let's move on to the D major scale. So the D major scale starts on D. Ooh, big surprise, huh? And it goes up to D. Now, we're going to follow the same pattern of the tones and semitones. This is sort of a review to see if you guys remember. So follow along with me. So we need a tone, another tone. So that is a tone, is it not? Because there's something in the middle there. So we're skipping a link, skipping a link. Now we don't want to skip a link because we need a semitone. So that's a semitone. Now we need another whole tone, and another whole tone, and another whole tone, and a semitone. So we have an F sharp and a C sharp in this scale. Two sharps. So just remember F and C. So now, in your mind, before you play this, I want you to depress all these keys in your head, as if all of them are down, or like color them with a blue highlighter in your brain. And then when your hand goes over it, play those notes as if those are the only notes that exist on the piano. Because if there's no other notes, how are you going to hit any other note but the right notes? Just like that. Okay, so the D major scale has an F sharp and a C sharp, and if you remember, a sharp goes up a semitone and a flat goes down. Now, to add a little bit more to the sharps and flats that we did last time, here's another helpful tip. Well, sort of more advanced. Now, say we have the F sharp, that's one semitone up. Now, where would an F flat be? It's the E. See? On the F, it goes one semitone down to the E. So this E is actually called an F flat. If you were playing an F flat, that would actually be an F flat and an E at the same time. So try not to get too confused, because generally you're going to see it as written as an E. Very rarely do you ever see F flats, so don't worry about it too much. This is more of the sake for filling in any gaps that you might be wondering about. Okay, so now, the same way, if this is an F flat, if you're going down, what if you're going up? So an E sharp. That's right, this is an E sharp. So what would this key be other than a C? It could also be a B sharp. And this B here could also be a C flat. Interesting, huh? So this is a C sharp, C flat. Now there's one last thing. There's sharps, flats, and then there's something called a natural. Oh no. Well, I wouldn't worry about this too much, because this is actually the easiest one of them all. And if you follow along with the sharps and flats so far, you're going to find this one even easier. So when you hear a natural, all that does is it brings it back to whatever key that it's natural to. So here's an example. If you have a D natural, guess what note you play? A D. And an F natural is an F. And an E natural is an E. And an A natural is an A. It's always going to be whatever it's called. Okay? So anything. The only reason we have naturals is to cancel it. So say we have a D sharp, and then the next note we want to play they don't want a D sharp, say they are doing this, right, in the music. And so they've written an E, then they've written an E flat, or sorry, an E and then say D sharp. So to take that sharp away, because right now it's being directed to this key, they need to write a D natural, and then I'll pull it back to the D, like that. So the D natural brings it back to whatever key, or the natural brings it back to the key. And that's what that's all about. Right, so thanks for watching piano lesson number 3. I hope you found it helpful. And I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Well, I guess I won't be seeing you, you'll just be seeing me. So yeah, hopefully I'm helping you and that you're learning something from these videos. The next lessons are going to focus a little bit on rhythm and time. So we get to know how to play, well, we're going to first learn how to clap notes so that we can eventually put that to playing on the piano. So next lesson will be on note values and stuff like that. And then after that we'll go into probably sheet music or something like that. Okay, so happy practicing, hope everything's coming along very good, and take care. See ya. Bye.